Do you really want a state? Because you wanted a state in 1947, you had one, right?
Is not committing genocide.
The irony is just so ridiculous. Leave us the heck alone already. Move on with your life. Stop obsessing.
I've seen you've done a lot of advocacy on behalf of Israel, hundreds of thousands of followers ranging. I've seen your stuff on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, or formerly known as Twitter, TikTok. Any misinformation or repeated ideas that you've been seeing? Are you seeing any certain patterns? What wrongs need to be righted, and how can we correct them?
I think it's an easier question or an easier answer to say what accurate information is being distributed on social media.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many lies. I don't even think it's specific to this war. I think there has not been a conflict in the history of mankind with so many lies being just perpetuated and distributed, and so many millions of people believing the lies. It starts from the very foundation of the whole thing, right? Like, oh, we want a state. Do you really want a state? Because you wanted a state in 1947, you had one, right? And 20 times since then, including 2005. Like, do you really want a state? Well, let's check out your charter, Mr. Palestinian or Mr. Hamas, because your charter says you want dead Jews. So, like, that is the most foundational lie. Like, they don't want a state. They say it, they yell it, they scream it, and we don't want to listen to it. And the irony is the same people who are not listening to the Palestinians and saying, oh, they don't mean it, are the same people saying they deserve a state.
Why do you think that inner contradiction between what is being said in English, we want a state, and what's being said to their own people in Arabic, we want dead Jews, because that's exactly what the Hamas charter calls for? Why do you think that discrepancy is unknown to most Westerners?
I don't think it's unknown. We all have Google Translate. I think it's something they don't want to know, right? You don't want to know. And so you close your eyes, you put a blindfold on. They don't have a positive identity. They have a negative identity. And so, if you're going to be honest and you have, as a person, if you have some integrity and you're going around saying, let's give them a state, why don't you listen to what they're saying, right? And again, that is the most fundamental lie, but it continues. I mean, occupation, right? Really? Occupation causes terror? Well, presumably, if the occupation causes the terror, then if you remove the occupation, there should be no terror. And yet there was Arab terror against Jews before there was even a state of Israel, let alone an occupation. 1929, they're massacring Jews in Hebron. Why? For the future occupation? Like, another lie, right? And, Israel's occupying Gaza? Another lie. 2005, no Jews. We ethnically cleansed Gaza. There were no Jews in Gaza, not alive and not dead. We removed our dead from the ground. And so, like, occupation? What occupation? What were they fighting against on October 7th? They were going, again, in accordance with what they've always done, which is try to kill as many Jews as possible. And just somehow the world just keeps their blindfold on. It's wild.
Yeah. Well, all we can do is try to spread the truth and repeat the truth, because the lies get repeated. So I guess the more we repeat the truth, and I'll just add one more to your list. The PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, was founded and established in 1963, 4 years before any of this territory was "quote unquote" occupied. And it was founded to liberate. It was founded to liberate, Jerusalem and Israel from Palestine. So that's important to know, that 4 years before the 6-Day War, which resulted in Israel's "quote unquote" occupation, this whole movement began. There's just another little tidbit for our listeners. South Africa recently charged Israel of genocide in the United Nations International Court of Justice. How have you been combating the idea in this particular war that Israel is not committing genocide, but that the Palestinians or the Hamas group, and now you're saying it's also the PLO, which I don't disagree with? What key points have you been advancing when this word genocide gets thrown around?
You don't have to be too sophisticated. I mean, really, you don't have to be a rocket scientist, right? If you're going to come to me and say to me, Israel killed 30,000 people and that this is genocide, fantastic. I'll go with you. Just tell me how many of those people were actual terrorists, because the numbers that the world is quoting was provided by the ministry, the Gaza health ministry, which is Hamas. Meaning, you as a human being with a brain in your head and critical thinking are walking around quoting an actual terrorist organization that beheaded babies. Like, are you really thinking that's a reliable source? And if it is a reliable source, then please tell me, according to those numbers that you're quoting, how many of those quote unquote 30,000 people were terrorists? And the answer is 0, because according to the Hamas, everybody's innocent in Gaza, right? And everyone in Israel is a terrorist. The irony is just so ridiculous. And so if you're going to quote, these numbers, then let's talk about these numbers. And if you think that after 4 months of war, the most sophisticated army in the world was unable to kill a single terrorist, well, then you probably realize how ridiculous you sound. So it doesn't have to, you don't have to get too sophisticated. Just ask a simple question. If you're saying Israel committed genocide, just tell me the numbers. And when you talk to that person, whoever that person may be, and they look at you like, I don't know how many terrorists, Israel took out, well, you'd be like, that's because you're quoting Hamas. That's the end of the story. That's it.
And what do you think about the attacks from Hezbollah into Israel? Is Israel, in your opinion, going to try to calm this down or use this as the beginning of the next war?
I'm not obviously a military strategist nor am I a politician, so I don't have any answers other than, you can ask me as a person what I think. The miracle every generation is that our enemies don't unite to fight us. They fight against each other every time. It's unbelievable to watch Hezbollah and Hamas, two organizations that are dedicated to the absolute annihilation of the Jewish people, and they can't even join forces. It's unbelievable to watch. I mean, thank God. But I don't think Israel wants another war. I don't think, it's not that we couldn't fight another war. We absolutely could. But we're a peaceful people, right? Unlike the other religion that says they're a religion of peace, Judaism is actually a religion of peace, right? We pray for peace 100 times a day. And so we don't want a war. We didn't want the war with Hamas. We don't want the war with Hezbollah. If we can avoid it and we can prevent it, great. The whole thing's ridiculous. But the bottom line is this has to stop.
What is Israel saying in terms of the post-Hamas situation in the Gaza Strip? Who's going to run the show?
Yeah, that's the $1,000,000 question, right? I mean, I don't think anyone's made any declarations yet, but I think it's pretty much consensus that obviously Hamas has to go. The PLO cannot run. PLO, again, they're no less terrorists than Hamas is. They're just like, they play a nice game of disguise and masquerade. I don't think anyone in Israel wants to take Gaza back. And so for now, I think obtaining security control over Gaza is probably the best solution. But more importantly, what has to happen fundamentally is the complete denazification of Gaza, right? We cannot, even if we completely kill every single Hamas terrorist and Hamas no longer exists, that is a nice Band-Aid, right? Unless you deal with the indoctrination, right? Unless you deal with the next generation, it's just going to pop up again. So we need to deal with that.
Let's say that what you just envisioned becomes the new reality on the ground in the Gaza Strip. And you have some sort of Israeli military presence that's allowing local Palestinian populations to govern themselves. Have they been able to change it in Yuda V'Shomron in the West Bank? If they haven't been able to change it there, I mean, I'm not sure there's an answer to this question, but I'm curious, and I'm asking my friends and people in the know, because that's I agree 100%. The indoctrination, we need a new generation of Palestinians who are not raised to hate Jews. How do you do that?
There's historic precedents to this. It's not like we haven't done it before. We did it in Germany. We did it in Japan. These are societies just as loyal to their ideology as the Palestinians are. So we've done this before, and we need to do it again. And that's it. I mean, there's no stopping in the middle here, right? Because when you're teaching kids from age 0 that Jews are pigs and that you're going to meet 72 virgins in heaven when you murder a Jew, like, what do you expect them to do, right? So we need to. And by the way, thank you, UNRWA, for that, right? We need to rewire the entire educational system in Gaza and the Palestinian population in general. If that means, taking control of schools, I don't know. Again, I'm not, this isn't my area. One thing is for sure, this cannot continue, right? There's, what was will no longer be, right? I think everyone agrees that there was pre-October 7th and post-October 7th. Don't get me started on why anyone thought it was a good idea to disengage from Gaza unilaterally, why anyone thought it was a good idea to have a border with no buffer. Whoever heard of such a thing? These things are insane, but they happen. So now it's spilled milk and now we're here. So now the reality has to change. I think everyone knows that. We have to go to the guts, right? It's right now.
The guts is education. And by the way, I love that, Japan and Germany are actually, excellent examples of how two massive societies turned their ideology around. Germany, ironically, is one of the most supportive European countries of Israel. We still have survivors alive. It's pretty incredible. I guess if it can happen there, it can happen anywhere.
Just to throw in one more point there, one of the many points that the anti-Israel crowd or even, politicians around the world are saying is you're just creating the next generation, right? By bombing Gaza, you're creating more people who hate Israel. How come no one said that in Germany? Like, how come no one said that in Japan? No one doubted the necessity of World War II. Everyone understood that, yes, there are millions, I don't know how many million, many, many millions of Germans who were innocent, who died in World War II. Horrible, tragic. But that doesn't take away from the validity or the legitimacy of World War II. I don't think anyone in their right mind, questions whether World War II and the denazification of Germany was absolutely crucial. And yet, when it comes to, here, it's like, oh, we have to ask, why are you asking these questions if you never asked them about any other war?
But Hillel, you know why? you know what the major difference is? Because no one challenges the sovereign right of any European country that was attacked by Germany. No one challenges Switzerland's, or I don't know, Belgium, whatever country that the Nazi regime attacked. People understood that they had a right to exist. This is the problem. Israel was born in sin. And as long as Israel was born in sin, it never will have the right to defend herself, because she should never have existed to begin with. And that's why I think we have to go to the very, very beginning. Does Israel have a right to exist? If it does, then why is she being judged according to a standard that's impossible for any other country? I mean, it was crazy. I saw this on some city student was interviewed, and whoever was interviewing the young woman, said, well, where do you think all those Israeli Jews would go? And then the person said, do you understand that Israel was created because there was no place for the Jew to go? So I'm thinking about young American Jews, or just young Americans who have no concept of why Israel was created to begin with. I'm not even speaking religiously, spiritually. I'm just talking about safe haven.
It's funny. I can't help but laugh. Is in 1940, it was Jews get out of Europe, go to Palestine, and now it's Jews get out of Palestine, go to Europe. It's like, really, like, leave us the heck alone already. Move on with your life. Stop obsessing. There are so many things about this war that just don't add up. But the most basic one is, why does everyone even care? I mean, I don't need to tell you about the different conflicts and wars around the world that have infinitely more casualties. I mean, did Israel start this war unprovoked? Obviously not. Why is the world obsessed? I mean, it's the oldest hatred in the book, right? Again, I'm not telling you something you don't already know, but I'm maybe reiterating, which is, just look at history. Like, literally open a history book. Look at the history of the Jewish people, right? Let's start at Egypt, right? 210 years of persecution, right? With his buddy Moses, and says, here, 10 plagues, Jews, get out of here. 80% stayed. What, are you nuts? What, like, how is that even possible? Like, we know this, right? We've learned this, but I don't know about you, but I never thought about it. I never stopped and thought about it. Like, how could that be? What was their narrative, right? What were those Jews, Israelites in Egypt? What were they telling themselves? I'll tell you what they were telling themselves. I'm Egyptian. I was born here. My parents were born here. My grandparents were born here. I have a roof over my head and food on the table. Leave me alone with this land of milk and honey stuff. That's it, right? They just stayed. They ignored reality. They just did not see what was right in front of their faces. But it gets again, it continues throughout the generation in the desert. Again, we learned the story. I never thought about it. How could it be that 10 of the world, like the generations leading rabbis, right? 10 heads of tribes come back from the land of Israel, and they say, no, you can't go there. And they spoke badly about the land of Israel. How could that be? So we all know that story. We accepted that's what happened. But why? What did they tell themselves? I wasn't there, but I would imagine they told themselves what often religious Jews in America and other places today tell themselves, which is, in the desert, I have a direct line of communication with God. I'm very frum. I'm very religious here in the desert. Tell me to go into this country and build an economy and join an army. I'm here. I get man from Hashem, and he has clouds of glory around. We're buddies, me and God. I am super frum. God's like, dude, what are you even talking about? Get your into the land of Israel, right? And then we just read this like 2 weeks ago, right? We get to the sea after everything that God did for us, and we're like, oh God, you're gonna kill us here? It's like, are you not seeing that what God has done for you? You think God brought you all the way here to kill you? So, okay, fine. He splits the sea. We get to the other side. We're like, you'd think by now, after everything, you'd be like, okay, we get it, God. You love us. You got our backs. No, what did they say? We're coming out of the sea. The Egyptians are probably coming out right behind us. And God's like, no. They're dead. And they're like, no, I want to see them. And God spits the bodies on the shore. Like, do you not see what's right in front of your faces? That's what we do. We ignore what's right in front of our faces. And the same thing's happening right now. I mean, we just don't see reality. And by the way, the script, it keeps repeating itself. That's one element. But then there's the whole other element, which is there's an empire, and the empire grows and grows and grows. And when it reaches levels of influence that are unparalleled, then morality goes out the window, right? The emperor puts people to fight to their death, and all morality goes out the window. And they don't want, in that society, they no longer want, quote unquote, old school morality, aka the Torah, right? Because where does the world know that it's immoral to murder or rape? From the Torah. So they don't want that Torah shoved down their throats anymore. So what do? They come after the messenger because you kill FedEx, you don't get your package, right? They come after us. They're like, we don't want your morality. And what we do every single time, it's the same thing. We come, we say, no. Hey, we're just like you. Look, we're fully assimilated. In fact, we're not just like you. We are more Greek than you, Greeks. We are more Roman than you. We are more liberal than the most liberal people in America. Don't come after us. We're just like you. And then that empire is like, no. Let me tell you something. You are not just like us. In fact, we have a special tool that we can use to prove to you that you're not just like us. It's called antisemitism. and then we know the rest. So it's the same thing over and over again. It's what we're doing right now. I'm speaking to my friends every day. I'm like, why are you not on a plane? Oh, it's not going to happen here. Really? Really? Like, are you? There's not going to be concentration camps in America, but like, if the transition from dangerous rhetoric to the extermination of Jews in Europe took years, after October 7th, the anti-Semitism skyrocketed in a day. So what's going to happen in a month from now or 2 months from now? I mean, we have anti-Semites in Congress. We have Kanye West. We have Kyrie Irving. We have Jews being beaten and murdered in the streets. And we're like, oh, it's not going to happen here. Wake the heck up. Every Jew belongs in Israel. Does that mean right this second? No. I mean, you have an important role over there, and there's no question about that. But if anybody's there and they think that that's their home and Israel's not on their mind at all, then they're kidding themselves. They're not paying attention.